Ooh, it's been a while, hasn't it? Now, I don't know if this is going to get interrupted. I've had some issues with the speaker that I use because I don't have good hearing and I should be wearing hearing aids, but not something I necessarily enjoy doing um, more, for more reasons than one, actually. And gosh, I really should try to focus on the camera a little bit more when I'm speaking. It is a bit of a challenge, but I'll try. And these remarks are off the cuff. I've kind of been juggling thoughts in my head for a while, looking for the best opportunity to basically share some perspective. Uh, the house that I'm in can't always get the privacy that I want, and interruptions are very likely. But it appears that in this particular case, I will. Oops, and there's what I was talking about. Okay, let's see if I get that. Okay, so the title of this is American football, patriotism, and American animal territoriality. Now, I think that the best place to start is to share that we have all been misled. And we have been misled by being told that we're not animals. We are animals. That's all we are. We have limitations. We do everything that many, many animals do. And of course, and that would include birds, snakes, mammals, so reptiles, mammals, fish, you name it, oh my gosh, I might, in, you know, it's all in our wheelhouse. And thoughts are really an illusion, because if you are sincere and you honestly look at yourself and pause and try to evaluate or try to understand the mechanics of thinking, I believe you'll fall short of understanding that. Because even though we do speak, and I'm stringing together words, and you're hearing the words that I'm stringing together, we have to keep in mind that this is the bubble that we've sort of grown in. And so the response to the words that I'm using is really more of a reflex than it is a sort of a connecting with shared thoughts. And it is an emotional bond. It is not a logical bond, because at the very core, all of the things that we say are simply a manifestation of our emotions. And the words are rationalizations that we keep grasping for. We created words. Words are manufactured by us. But all words are is, but all words are, if you stop and think about it, is the formation, a specific formation of sound using different muscles in your body as sound is emitted from your body. It's an organized sound. And this organized sound rather than have the intent, I would say, to um, to reason, okay, is really not anything more than attempts to control your personal environment. You have an environment. I have an environment. Everybody has their own personal space that they occupy from which they perceive and interact with their environment. And so when you're speaking, you're attempting to control that environment. It could be by influencing animals, other members of the same species, um, uh, uh, movement, uh, the adaptation of certain perspectives, which also enhances one's ability to control their environment. So you really, it is a very difficult concept, but the language that we speak has evolved not over 1,000 years, but it's actually evolved over millions of years. And it's not to say that we've been present a million years, because animals communicate. Animals emit sounds. They emit sounds that manifest danger, pleasure, food. So animals, they speak. They just don't speak the same language we speak. So again, the thing that the fundamental point that I'm trying to get across here is that at our very core, we are animals. Doesn't matter we call ourselves humans, because that's what we call ourselves. The same way we call dogs dogs, and they could be anything else, and of course they are in different languages. I could say ball, and in English you understand what ball is, but in China somebody might understand something different from the sound emitted that says ball. They could conjure up, because that is a cultural enclave, in which a different series of sounds are utilized in order to uh, control the social order. Now, many animals are territorial. And when their space, when their territory is threatened, there are different emotional responses to that condition. They may flee if they see that they may be overpowered, or they may posture aggressively, like the puffer fish. They blow up, or they might put a sign on their garage door that says "Beware of dog." We we are territorial, and some of us believe that our territory is much bigger than it actually is, like country. Have you ever heard anybody say, love it or leave it? That is a territorial um, manifestation that says basically accept the conditions. Of course, it's also authoritarian, but accept the conditions of our current reality or get the fuck out of here. And my advice to anyone, if you ever encounter anybody who says something like that to you, is to ask them, who the fuck do you think you are? And I mean that in all honesty. And it's interesting when you look at football, American football, and the nature of the game. It is a game about conquering territory. An ultimate goal, you have a prize at the end of that. And it is done with a combination of overwhelming brute force and some strategy. The physical strength, of course, brute force, and some type of strategy. So, but most of the game is brute force. Uh, and so I do see that game, and I hate. Well, and I used to enjoy football. Actually, I used to run the office pool for like the vice president of the company. I mean, I was almost his right hand man, and he looked to me every week for the football pool. That was in white collar environment. This was in the financial industry, and in which I worked for 18 years, and I grew in that capacity. I wasn't a bank clerk for 18 years or anything like that. I actually had a job where I was responsible for uh, managing and researching the performance of the investment instruments that were held in institutional accounts, and the book of business that this broker had, and she hired me to be part of her team, was about $500 million. And it was my responsibility to analyze those investments and to report on why they performed poorly or why they performed well. And of course, help if there was any perception that the investments needed to be changed. But this was a constant job. I had to monitor and report, and also help with the sales material, and for new clients and new proposals for investments that those particular accounts would hold. The minimum balance that most of the accounts had was $10 million. That was the minimum. Maximum, I really don't remember. It's been a while. It's been a little bit. It's been about 15 years, and in order to do that, I had to get a license, which was then, and could be called something different now. I'm not sure because I haven't been in the business. It was a FINRA Series 7. And that allowed me to basically communicate with clients and write up orders if somebody wanted to buy a stock or a bond or whatever it was. Technically, I was qualified to do that, even though that wasn't the nature of my position. The nature of my position was to absorb all the technologies that I could in order to deliver the reports that needed to be reported. And I will highlight the fact that I started doing this about let's see. Well, it was roughly about 12 years after I graduated from college. What did I do when I graduated from college with a BA in interdisciplinary studies? I fucked around. I was really not. I didn't feel comfortable at all being enclosed in a box, or thinking that I had to select a career that would be the way I would live my entire life. Now, I will say this: I did suffer a lot because of this, and I worked in order to fuel my vices and my play goals, if you will. I had a restaurant job, figuring, if I decided to work in restaurants, because at the very least, I would make a certain amount of money, but part of that money would not have to be spent on food, because I would be able to eat at the restaurants that I worked at. And so there was a little bit to that. And I did also in the restaurant. I mean, I've worked in all kinds of restaurants, and one of the best ones I worked at was one that closed not too many years ago, maybe 5 years ago, in Manhattan, called the NoHo Star, which was north of Houston on Lafayette, really just blocks away from CBGB's. And Punk Rock Jane from Wisconsin actually introduced me to that site. And it was the first time that I worked in a restaurant that had these big paper hats. It was an open kitchen. and I met a lot of fun and interesting people. And one of my best friends was the dishwasher. His name was Mr. Chi. He hardly spoke any English, and somehow we managed to work things out, and we really had very, very pleasant exchanges. He was a formidable individual who worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and sent all his money back to Hong Kong to his family. And he lived in an apartment that he shared, I believe, with 6 or 5 other people. So with him, it would have been 6. And in Manhattan, New York, you can imagine. Uh, so well, I'm getting a little bit off track here. Let me see if I can rein myself back in. Um, so I think it's fairly easy to see or understand the territorial nature of the game of football. And patriotism is a completely manufactured concept. And I would say that that concept benefits the leaders of the tribe more than anybody. Because if you really pay attention to things, that you will notice that people's behavioral drivers are emotional, and love of territory, profound love of territory, is something that people are enculturated with. It is something that we are indoctrinated with. That's what the Pledge of Allegiance is, because if you dissect it and you look at all the words, they are completely void of any profound meaning. I mean, justice for all, there's no fucking justice for all here, you know, and it's not a united country. I mean, if anything, it may be an ideal, but even as an ideal, it is farcical. And it's no different from the utopia that communists or socialists or progressives or Republicans or Democrats or anybody has. It's really the same thing. Whoops, I think I stopped myself up. See how I correct this? Okay, sorry about that. Not sure exactly what you saw. I know what I saw. Basically, the keyboard just dropped and kind of did something. So, it really is a tool that others will use to manipulate people into their particular agenda and goal. It's very pernicious. And of course, when we're talking about 325 or 350 million people, you can't get 350 million people on the same page. I mean, they're trying to herd cats, because that's how we behave, like cats. We kind of do what we want, whatever it is that we want, that's what we think is right. A lot of confirmation bias. We really don't stop to think about the things that we do. We just do them without thought. And like I said, most of us are navigating our life based on feeling and emotion, not on reason and not on logic. Rationalizations, yes, but that doesn't make anything real. As far as I can tell, the only thing that is real is greed, a profound greed. And it's not just greed as far as money goes. It's greed, it's ego greed. In other words, my ego is more correct than your ego. My ego sees things the way correctly, not like you. So there's a psychological greed, there's territorial greed, linguistic greed. I mean, you name it, there is a lot of greed. And there are many egos that have been empowered with money by accumulating wealth. And you don't have to be smart to accumulate wealth. You can be the dumbest person on the planet and be incredibly wealthy if you're greedy enough, if your drive is strong enough, if you really look at that wealth as your North Star, which is what a lot of people do. You see, I've gotten to the point where I can't stand money. I try to get by with as little money as possible because I see what it does to people. It destroys them physically, it destroys them mentally, it destroys them emotionally, and it alienates them from even their family members. I have friends. One friend who I just ran into, and I was so happy to see her because she has rebuilt her life in an impressive fashion. And I just smiled when we took a picture of each other together because kind of when we met, I would say that we were both broken. And I did tell her this. And I'm not saying that we're completely fixed. I wouldn't say that I'm ever completely fixed. But we are both doing profoundly better. So profoundly better that the smiles in our picture really, it says it all. Because there is a peace and there is a contentment with regards to where we are at this point in our lives. So I know you might be looking at my surroundings and saying, well, it looks like you don't have anything to worry about. Well, something that I think you should pay close attention to is that all of us, no matter what we see, we only see the very tip of the iceberg. We have no knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes or below the water. And we don't know how big that iceberg is. So any assumptions that are made, you should probably focus on the first three letters of that word, ass. You would be making an ass of yourself by making any assumptions based on what you see and hear right at this moment. We do not share an objective reality at all. Everybody has their own individual universe that they live in, that they see and they move around in, based on the feelings and based on the behavior that's been conditioned. Let me share another term with you that is the same as behavioral conditioning: animal training. Everything is based on a system of rewards and punishment. Why do they tell you about Santa Claus when you're little? Because they're trying to modify your behavior, dangling a reward in front of you. And that becomes so thorough that all of a sudden a certain date pops up on the calendar and boom, all our behavioral patterns begin to change because of the anticipation of the reward. And of course, they also use negative reinforcement by saying you won't get any reward, so you better behave. Santa Claus is a child's God, and God is an adult's Santa Claus. Both of those concepts are used to manipulate and modify behavior. to control behavior. Patriotism is nothing but animal territoriality dressed in a clown suit. That's all it is. That's all it is. And other people are using that concept to get you to comply and exhibit a certain type of behavior that they expect from you when they have no right to make those claims. No one has a monopoly on the truth. No one is an authority on reality. We do not know what the fuck this is, and the only purpose that we have is the one that we give ourselves. There is no outside entity. The reason I say that is because none of us have the ability to even begin to fathom what an absolute power or essence is or wants or anything to that effect. Nobody has a direct line to a God. No one. And if they say they do, they are lying to your face. And they are protecting their own ego because they have been raised by their society, by their family, by their culture to believe so. Let me make the following suggestion that any church that flies a national flag is not a spiritual center. It is an indoctrination center. They have you by the balls. Oh, no, let me correct that. They have some people by the balls, but a lot of people have actually been castrated spiritually, mentally, and physically. And if you don't understand the effect of castration, one of them is obesity. They have lied to you about many, if not most, things that you know, that you feel, that you think you know. It is incredibly difficult to rise above that condition. I can say with a certain amount of certainty that only recently I have achieved what I could consider a reasonable level of emotional, behavioral, and intellectual maturity. We really, when we go through life, it's incredibly intuitive. It's almost like we're blind, and we are blind because the tools that they've given us are not tools that serve you. It serves the people that gave them to you. If you feel overwhelmed, you have an incredibly good reason to feel overwhelmed. If you feel like you have no idea what you're supposed to do in life, you have an incredibly good reason to feel that way. It is totally justifiable. I will tell you this. If billionaires exist, there is no absolute reason for anybody to work more than 20 hours. And with those 20 hours, they should be compensated enough to live with at least dignity, to be able to shower and shave and eat, to do the basics. Yeah, I know you see these material things, but I've been divesting myself of most of the material things except for my clothing. This computer has probably be gone at some point in time. I'm kind of looking at some new plans, and I'm looking forward to the artificial date that we've created called 2025. One of the ways that I manifest my emotional, behavioral, and intellectual maturity is I don't observe holidays. I don't give a shit if they're secular or not. They're religious. It's all bullshit. All of it. All the holidays is just a form of manipulation. And of course, they continue. And, a lot of people respond like animals. Like animals. We just chase that little coin, that carrot that's being dangled in front of us. And we all have our own confirmation bias. We all look at ourselves and say, oh, my condition is okay. And this is the way it should be for everybody. But that analysis is really, really, really bad. And bad and good don't exist, really. Again, these are manufactured concepts because you can tell, because in some cultures, that some things that are good in other cultures are bad. That means that it's all manufactured. It's all based on the feelings that are shared by the groups. Color of your skin, meaningless. It has no meaning, and race is not a real thing. It's not a scientific thing. And you cannot say this person is white and this person is black and this person is Asian. You can't. Maybe way back. There's really, our environment shapes our appearance. If you look at a truck driver, their environment, in some cases, not all, is very limited. And the scope of their movement is very limited. And so what happens in their environment? Because it's like being in a box. They grow. They become obese. Because their environment is a closed environment, and they consume, but don't move. One of the things that I've started to share with some friends of mine is the fact that I look at my body as a filter, not a repository. So whatever I put in, I have to make an effort to get it out. I'm not going to rely on my internal mechanics to do these things on their own. And so how do I personally do that? I run. In fact, I may have broken my record today. I'm having a problem with my app, and I don't think it's recording the information correctly, but I am very, very close to running a 6 miles in an hour. And a year ago, I was at 4 miles an hour. And because of this, I have conditioned my body. And when you condition your body, you also condition your mind. But what is my reward? My reward is being satisfied with what I do. That's the reward. Well, there's a lot of other byproducts to that. I'm happier. I'm more confident. I have more energy. And it makes sense because your body, if it's a complete body, has 11 systems. All of those systems benefit when I run. All of them, including the internal microbes, bacteria, oxygen. All these things are being stimulated and they are being conditioned to accept their reality at a higher frequency of movement. And the laws of physics apply to our bodies just as well as they do to foreign objects. So if I run and I run and I run, when I am in a rested state, my internal mechanics, boom, 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 they are still moving. I consider pooping 3 times the hat trick. I consider that success. Because I know that my body is feeling good about what I do. Sometimes my feet hurt. Well, that means I have feet. Pains that I had and I experienced when I was obese and weighed 250 pounds, they're gone. Medicine that I would take, gone. Cholesterol medicine, history. And my cholesterol, where it needs to be. And for maybe 20 years, it was elevated. The blood is pumping, circulating, carrying all the information that it needs to all the different places. My senses are being stimulated. Now, I understand that not everybody can run. In fact, I couldn't run when I weighed 250 pounds, but I got there. I made the transition eventually. So when you look at life, I guess one of the things that you should look at, if you want to understand life, you need to understand yourself. And if you don't understand yourself, that's where you need to focus. Understand your behavior. Understand your thoughts. Understand where they came from. Those are the things that will help you understand what's happening outside better. There's really, as much as we study and as much as we grasp, the satisfaction from a certain type of car, all these things are, in some cases, are a defense mechanism. If a person is incredibly insecure, they want a big car to feel more secure. A lot of egos out there, and a lot of damaged egos, a lot of insecure egos, a lot of greedy egos, a lot of pompous egos. And unfortunately, wealth and success reinforce negative ideas. And it makes the person that has those ideas think that they're good ideas, that they're great ideas. But shitting on other people is not a great idea. And it really shows signs of intellectual, emotional, and behavioral immaturity. You're still growing. Or maybe you're stunted, child. All this facial hair, aggression, insecurities, or posturing. It's all an illusion. Something that we want to manifest or something that we want to present to cover up for our shortcomings. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that football and patriotism are manufactured, and they reinforce negative traits. And we can see that all around us. The aggression, the violence, the notion that others are less than us, especially those that are less fortunate, that haven't had the ability to have some kind of stable environment to at least be physically secure, financially secure, spiritually secure, even though it's a false spirituality. And because nobody has a direct line to a God. No one. And all authority that is assumed in that realm is false. It is a complete false, and it's just something that has grown and grown and grown and grown, and it's out of control. Authority will abuse its authority because it wants to protect its power. It wants to protect its territory. With some animals have larger territories. Not that that's what they're entitled to, but that's what they feel, emote that they're entitled to. Somebody asked me to talk about emotional predators a little bit more. And so I do think that this kind of ties into that, because it's not just emotional predators that surround you. It's psychological predators, reality predators, financial predators, territorial predators, fashion predators, sexual predators, of course. The thing that I am most disturbed by is the arrogance of spiritual ignorance and intellectual ignorance, if you want to even call it that, because again, it's not intellectual. Now, a person has said to me or commented, well, we send rockets to the moon, of course we're superior. That doesn't mean we're superior. How can we be superior if there are children that are dying from starvation while others are taking a joyride around the moon, while babies are being bombed? The United States is responsible for more than 65% of the weapons that are used worldwide. And if you look at the top 10 manufacturers of weapons of war, at least 6, if not 7, are American companies. 1 Russian, 1 British, 1 Chinese, and I'm not sure which one the other is. And that is that is a paradigm of, the authoritarianism, might makes right. Okay, overpower, overwhelm. It's the same techniques that were used in empires like the Incan Empire and the Mayan Empire or the Aztec Empire. They would subdue smaller cultures and eat them up. Basically, they would almost starve them into submission by capturing or limiting their access to all the vital resources that they needed in order to live. They were beaten into submission. And I will suggest to you that people who are obese, and I was obese, are beaten into submission. And so if you have no other way out, you just fall into a black hole of despair. Now, that doesn't mean that an obese person can't smile and can't be happy. I'm not saying that at all. But I will say this, that when you're obese, that's almost like putting the engine of a Honda Civic in a Ford F-350 and expecting it to last just as long as the actual engine of a 350, the size of the engine and the power that it needs to have, to last as long as it needs to last. Obviously, your internal organs are not going to be able to keep up with the physical body and the fat, the biomass that you have accumulated in your body. I would suggest that football is a game for fat boys because they can't run around like, people who play soccer. I guess they could be a goalie. But it's all tied in, and it's incredibly complex. I'm not saying I have all the answers or anything like that. But what I am telling you is that there are a lot of greedy people. There are a lot of aggressive people, and none of the authority that they claim is actually theirs. But the only way you're going to find strength is to strengthen yourself. Yourself. Make your body stronger, not weaker. This is something that I have struggled with almost my entire. I'll be 66 in a few months. And I ran almost 6 miles, and I used to run 4 miles earlier this year. I lost my train of thought on that one. I know I was going to go somewhere with it, but I can't. I kind of got distracted for some reason. But as I'm saying here, you want to find and I'm not telling you that maybe Richard Simmons, who died not too long ago, he was a former fat boy, and he was always encouraging people to move. And that's what you have to do. And if you don't move, if your life is behind a steering wheel for almost all the time, you have windshield vision and you have windshield thoughts. You do not see reality on the ground. You do not see reality on the ground. I'm going to stop there because I'm kind of tapering and going in different directions, but I hope that you might have heard something. And I'm going to repeat something that I haven't said in a while. Just remember, the past is an illusion, and the present is confusion. And the future is whatever you decide to make it. Try to have a great day. Oh, gosh, I did remember what I was going to say. I'm going to say it. That I have tried to understand why I spent so much time in my life destroying myself when I could have been building myself. But I think that, not to, not accept personal responsibility, but I was influenced in that way. It was what society and friends and family taught me. The 2 young kids that had me, they had completely different agendas. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And so they didn't raise me The television raised me. My mother, I have to give her more credit than my father, but I have to give them a little bit of credit. My mother did the one thing, despite all her personal failings, she really, really wanted me to graduate from college. And I'm glad I did. And again, and when I went, the the things that I chose to study, they I it wasn't a carrot that made me study certain things so that I could become successful or wealthy. All I wanted to do was learn. And so I studied psychology and anthropology and literature and history and chemistry and logic and philosophy and computer science and astronomy, all kinds of things. And I'm very thankful that most of my education was in Peru and it wasn't in the United States, because I do think that I would be a different person today if I had just grown up entirely in this country in one bubble. So, with that being said, remember what I said about the past, the present, and the future. Try to get a rein on yourself. You're a wild horse, and you're still beautiful, but you can be more powerful. Find your power. Take care.